Welcome to Whispering Loudly, the award-winning Workshop Whisperer podcast, as featured by Apple, with Rachel Evans, the #1 automotive business coach in the aftermarket. Thanks to Platinum sponsor Podium, Titanium sponsor Mechanic Desk, and Diamond sponsor Ventaviv. Welcome to Performance Hub with Dean Evans.
Whispering Loudly is the Workshop Whisperer podcast, and Performance Hub is a series of podcasts with Coach Dean Evans.
Hi, Mel. Thanks for having us on the podcast.
Pleasure.
Again.
Now, Dean, we have had such a fabulous response to the episodes that we've already done together, looking a little more at personal performance rather than business performance, because we know that your business can't be optimal unless you yourself as the owner are optimal. So we wanted to do a little series for this season, and today you're going to give everyone out there some tips on how to overcome being a workaholic, which we know with our clients that we chat to every day is a huge problem. So I know that if you're out there listening, you're probably thinking, well, what do you actually mean when you say workaholic? So what are we talking about there?
Yeah, well, when we talk about a workaholic, and I say this as a recovering workaholic myself, coming from a background where I could easily get lost in work and literally find things to do and make it incredibly difficult to take myself away from work. When we're talking about a workaholic or a workaholism, it fits under the label of addictive behaviours, right? So any addictive behaviour must meet one of three criteria, okay? It must meet a need for certainty, must meet a need for variety, it must meet a need for connection, and it must meet a need for significance. And if three of those four needs are met, then it's going to produce an addictive behaviour. And when we talk about workaholism, it is a habitual behaviour that will keep you focused on one particular thing or searching for ways to continue to engage yourself in one particular arena or avenue to the detriment of almost everything else. So when we describe workaholism, it's an addictive behaviour.
Okay, and for you listening out there, you likely know a workaholic or are one yourself. It's that person who leaves for work early in the morning before the family gets up, and they are perhaps not home before the family goes to bed again. And even though you may have the best laid plans for the family to sit down for dinner, for your other half to tuck the kids into bed at night after night, something is always going down and that person stays at work.
Yeah, well, there's just as you were saying that, one very clear example just sprang to mind. That is, in most cases, if you want to, if you want to find a workaholic, go look in the mirror. That's probably the first one that you're gonna find. But here's the sign, and this is the one that's probably going to hit you right in the heart. In most cases, you'll know you're a workaholic because you will do more for your customers than you will for your kids or your family. You will stay behind to fix another car because that job's got to get on and or got to get out, and you will do that as a priority over being home for dinner, for bath time, for bedtime, like you said you would. And again, I say that as a recovering workaholic myself. You just find a reason. So your family becomes, the value of family becomes a concept. The reality is you will prioritise one more job, one more task, one more tune-up over that time that you promised with your family, with your kid. And that brings in a whole other set of circumstances in terms of, conflict at home.
You might not necessarily think that you are choosing the customer, though, yourself, would you? Because in your mind, you think everything you're doing is for the family.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that as we go through, the 5-step recovery process. But absolutely, your brain, you create a belief by engaging in this behaviour over and over and over again that you're doing this for the family, that this is all for the greater good. And in a sense, it is, of course, because in most cases, the workaholic is the male of the family. I understand that's a generalist statement, and again, I don't want anyone to misunderstand or misrepresent what I'm saying. In most cases, it's the male, and certainly in this industry, automotive industry, it tends to be the case. So by engaging in that behaviour over and over again, you create the belief that what you're doing is for the good. So yes, you're providing. Yes, you're putting food on the table. You're paying for the mortgage, paying for the rent, doing whatever you're doing. But as we look through these 5 steps, the perspective that you have versus the perspective that the people closest to you have are often at odds with each other.
Okay. Well, let's get to the 5 steps. A 5-step process to recovery from being a workaholic. What's step 1?
Yeah, so step 1, like any addictive behaviour, the path to recovery reveals itself once you have accepted and admitted that you've got a problem. And so if you ever want to begin the journey to recovery as a workaholic, then number 1 is you need to accept the facts and admit that you are in fact a workaholic. Nothing else can occur or will occur until you've got to that point where you are willing and able to raise your hand, put your hand on your heart and say, hey, I'm a workaholic. I devote more of myself to work than I do to any other pursuit in life. It has to begin there. And,
it may sound a little funny that we're talking about something called workaholic, but this is a deadly serious thing, right? This breaks up marriages. It puts strain on relationships.
Yeah, it breaks up marriages. It puts strains on a relationship in its most destructive form. It actually ends lives. There is a condition, and the name of it escapes me now, but a condition where certain professionals expect that they will die at their desk. They understand that work is their life, and that's where life is going to end, at their desk. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like much of a life for me.
Want to find out how the Workshop Whisperer team can put your auto repair shop on the path to business success? Head to www.workshopwhisperer.com/whispering loudly to claim your free workshop success session with the team.
What's step 2 in the recovery process?
Yeah, so step 2 is about you need to pre-fill your time. What do I mean by that? From having a similar conversation with hundreds, if not thousands of auto repair shop owners, the biggest or the most common reason why those individuals stay at work is because they have not taken any time to think about what they would do with the time available outside of work. So what's step 2? You've got to pre-fill time. It really is thinking about your bucket list. What would you do in your wildest dreams with the time that you had available to you, or rather the time that you made available to you, if you chose not to spend all that time at work?
And that's a classic one with our engine room clients, isn't it? When we're helping them set up a 4-day work week, the initial resistance to that can be from them because they have no idea what they would do on that 5th day when they would otherwise be at work. They have not allowed themselves to have hobbies, to have time for self-care, for catching up with family. They literally have excluded all of that from their lives.
Yeah, they just haven't taken a moment to consider what they could be doing. They do the only thing they know how to do, and in most cases know that they're good at doing, which is work. So that's what they do.
What's step 3?
Step 3 is fantastic, right? So step 3 is, like any detective, you've actually got to review the evidence, right? Every behaviour is a learned strategy. And so an individual that is so deeply driven to work learnt that behaviour, that work ethic, that attitude, that approach to what they do from someone else when they were growing up. So consider, who were your role models? Who were the major influences in your life, often before the ages of 12, in many cases before the ages of 7. So mum, dad, aunties, uncles, teachers, people that you looked up to and were a significant influence on your attitude to work and your approach to work in those formative years. And in many cases, well, in fact, in all cases when it comes to addiction, is that any addictive behaviour is designed to meet an emotional void. So what does that mean for people listening to this now? You probably got a sense of significance, a sense of affection, a sense of attention, or a sense of love from the people who you were looking for validation from in those formative years. So the people that you cared about and cared about you, being rewarded, recognised for your work ethic was a way that you met your need for connection. And so unconsciously your brain went, oh, I like the way this feels when people say you're doing a good job. So the job then became do more of that job. And over time, you just dug yourself a deeper and deeper and deeper hole inside your workshop.
A vicious cycle.
Join our free Facebook group, Your Profitable Auto Repair Shop, and join in on the conversation with auto repair shop owners just like you globally.
So what is step 4 in the recovery process?
So step 4 is to twist the knife, right? As if this wasn't, maybe if you're listening right now, maybe it feels pretty bad now, but now we want to twist the knife, right? We've just kind of stabbed you a couple of times, woken you up, but now we want to twist the knife. And this is where you've got to think about your true legacy. In many cases, as a parent, you'll be thinking, when I say this as a parent, but maybe if you haven't got kids listening to this, maybe you're looking at your team, your apprentices, and your newer team members. So on some level, you're thinking to yourself, well, you know what? I'm going to show them what a great work ethic is. I'm going to show them what hard work looks like. They don't know what hard work was. Should have seen what it was like when I was doing my apprenticeship. What it was, the differences that it was then. When we pair that back to the people closest to us, and again, as a dad of 3 kids, I think about my 3 when I say this. While I was spending all this time under the misguided belief that I was leaving a legacy for them of what hard work looked like, the true legacy I was leaving was, hey, Dad's never here. Dad's at work. Oh, Dad's doing that again. Oh, Dad said he'd be here, but he came home late. Now, understand that there is no perfect balance here. And there are times where, yeah, sure, a bit of chaos ensues and you need to stay around for a little bit. But if your default setting is to hang around at the workshop, not get home for, dinner time, bedtime, bath time, whatever it might be, or you're missing other, school events, sporting events, social events, concerts, date night, because you got one more job, then we know we've got a real issue. So, what's step 4? It's to consider the real legacy. I mean by that, what's your partner's perspective on you staying at work all the time? What's your kid's perspective on you staying at work all the time? What's the true legacy you're actually going to be leaving behind if all you choose to do is work, work, and work?
And that was a real eye-opener when we spoke to our clients about this, getting the kids' perspective, and some of them had already been freely given their children's perspective, and it was really sad to them to listen to their kids saying, you are always at work. I didn't ask you to come with me to that event because you are always at work.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's where a separation begins, repeated requests from your loved ones to have you join them at certain events, and because over time you prioritise work, they stop asking. And then suddenly here's a communication breakdown. Well, you didn't ask me. Well, when we did, you never turned up. And here's the anger, the frustration, the irritation created when 2 people have competing beliefs. The workaholic feels like they're providing for their family, and those at home, that are nurturing that loving, caring family environment feel isolated, ostracised, separated. Both believe they're doing the right thing, inverted commas, and yet what occurs is a breakdown of a relationship, breakdown of communication, and the impact that has on a business overall, and we've both experienced this. It can be catastrophic.
So step 5, to finish us off here with our recovery process for workaholism.
Yeah, well, step 5 should put a smile on your face, particularly when I share this example with you. But step 5 is you've got to make a deal with the devil. And what I mean by that is, I can remember in previous relationship, quite often we'd end up with a lot of junk in our garage, and we would devote a weekend to getting the junk out of the garage, preparing to get rid of it, work out what we needed, what we didn't need, clear out the clutter and the junk, and just put the stuff that we needed back in. But what would happen? We'd take all the junk out, we'd clean the garage, get rid of the cobwebs, sweep the floor, do whatever we needed to do. The garage looked fantastic. We had a nice clean garage, and then we'd just put all of the stuff back in, and we'd clear out none of the clutter. So when we talk about making a deal with the devil, that means you have to look at what are all the things that you're currently doing i.e. saying yes to, that is keeping you locked inside your shop for hours and hours and hours on end. You've got to seriously note down every single task that keeps you there. And then the deal with the devil is that you've got to make a decision on what you will not put back into your day. You know, the smallest task, the biggest tune-up, it doesn't matter what it is, you get to decide, but you must decide. You cannot keep doing all the same tasks. That is the true nature of addictive behavior, where you justify your behavior because you get it's an impermanent positive emotional response to that behavior. So you've got to decide what needs to go, and you need to be very, very clear on whether you're going to dump it, whether you're going to delegate it, or whether you're going to delay doing it, so that you actually give yourself time, space, and permission to get yourself out of your shop and home to your family and your loved ones.
Now, if you are a workaholic listening to this, is it something that you'd need accountability with to be successful, to recover? Or do you think that most people, once they realise they're a workaholic, can tackle this?
Well, I guess the best way to straight up, the answer is this. You know, every elite performer in the world has a coach. And by coach, I mean a partner who keeps them accountable for doing the work they need to do to improve the way they perform, behave, and live. Now, does that need to be a paid professional coach? Not necessarily, but there are, just like there are groups for AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, there are groups around the world called WA, Workaholics Anonymous. In extreme cases, if you need to join that group, join that group. Because most importantly, you need to understand you're not going through this alone. I say this as a recovering workaholic. You're not going through it alone. There's other people that have the same addiction, the same affliction as you, but you're not broken. You don't need fixing, but some of the decision making that you're currently employing needs some fine tuning to give you the freedom to say yes to you. Because every time you say yes to another car, another customer, you're actually saying no to other things in your life. So to answer your question specifically, a partner, accountability coach, whoever it is, absolutely, to help you stay on track, and more importantly, to help you see the signs of regression into old addictive patterns. Someone that can point that out and say, "Hey, Rach, you know that thing you do that got you here? Well, it looks like you're starting to do that again. What else could we do?"
Yeah,
and it keeps you curious and focused on the patterns of behaviour, the decisions you make that will lead you to recovery from workaholism.
Take a smoko and review us on your Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen.
We've discovered it's such a big thing, and this is why we have training around it for our engine room clients. And if you're out there listening and you realise that this is something you'd really like to overcome because things have gotten way out of control, and you'd like to bring more harmony back into your life so that you are there for those important events with family and with your partner, then I encourage you, to book in and have a chat with us to see if we can help you with what's going on for you. And that's as simple as going to the web address workshopwhisperer.com/survey, answering a couple of quick questions, and then you can book a time to chat. Dean, thanks so much for sharing that with us. So insightful, and I know that that's going to be another really powerful episode that our listeners will go back to time and again and likely share with their other half after they've finished listening today. So if you have a question about your auto repair shop that you would like answered, then please email us admin@workshopwhisperer.com, and we will answer your question on one of our next Workshop Whispers episodes. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to being with you again next week.
Thanks for listening to Whispering Loudly, the award-winning Workshop Whisperer podcast, as featured by Apple with Rachel Evans, the #1 automotive business coach in the aftermarket. Thanks to Platinum sponsor Podium, Titanium sponsor Mechanic Desk, and Diamond sponsor Ventavid.